Affairs Program of the Institute for Policy Studies. I'm John Cavanna, Director of IPS, and you can find out more about us on the web at www.ips-dc.org. Today we are discussing the thorny issue of how the United States government, which now frames its foreign policy as fighting an endless war on terrorism, has aided and abetted and harbored terrorists on U.S. soil. In particular, we are focusing on the case of confessed terrorist Luis Posada Carriles. Posada is accused of involvement in numerous terrorist acts. We will get into these, including the 1976 bombing of a Cuban airliner, which killed 73 people. In April 2007, U.S. authorities released Posada from jail, and they have denied the Venezuelan government requests that he be extradited. Our guests today are attorney José Pertierra and Institute for Policy Studies fellow Saul Landau. Pertierra is representing the Venezuelan government in their extradition case for Posada. Landau is the author of Assassination on Embassy Row, an investigation of the 1976 car bombing, also carried out by anti-Castro Cubans, which killed his IPS colleagues, our IPS colleagues, Orlando Letelier and Ronnie Carpin-Moffett in Washington, D.C. Welcome to both of you to Defining the Issues. Let me start first with you, José Pertierra. Could you first just tell us tell us a little bit more about who Luis Posada is?
Well, thank you, John, for the invitation. You know, IPS is a very special place in my heart as well. I came here in 1975 to go to graduate school at Georgetown, and I was somewhat surprised at Georgetown that nobody cared about what was happening in Latin America and the dirty war, and I found IPS to be an oasis in this city, and it's an honor for me to be here with you and with Saul. Let me first correct something that you said. The U.S. government has not denied Venezuela's request for extradition. Venezuela presented its request for extradition 2 years ago tomorrow, on June 15, 2005. And we have received a single formal response, which was in November of 2005, where the State Department informed us by way of a diplomatic note that it had questions and concerns about the case that they would soon formulate and send to us. They have never sent us those questions. The case is still pending and has been publicly, the U.S. government has said it's pending. But moving beyond that, Posada Carriles is the Osama bin Laden of Latin America. He is one of the worst terrorists in the history of the Western Hemisphere. He's responsible not only for the downing of a passenger plane in 1976, he is responsible for many, many acts of terrorism perpetrated against Cuba and against governments who he thinks are allies of Cuba and businesses who he thinks are allies of Cuba. He has got a long history of terrorism, including trying to blow up an auditorium full of Panamanian students in 2000, masterminding a campaign of terrorist bombings in Cuba that resulted in the murder of an Italian by the name of Fabio Di Celmo. He had a long, storied career in Venezuela as Chief of Special Operations for the Venezuelan Secret Intelligence Agency in the early 70s, where he was personally responsible for tracking, interrogating, torturing, and murdering some of the opposition leaders in Venezuela. So he is a very notorious individual.
Yeah, let me, since the centerpiece of the case against him being a terrorist, or the case for him being a terrorist, is the downing of the Cuban airliner, I want to shift for a moment to a clip from a brand new feature-length documentary which has been done by the renowned Venezuelan filmmaker Angel Palacios. The film is called Posada Carriles, Terrorism Made in USA. It's a Telesur and Panafilms co-production. And we're going to play you a brief minute-and-a-half audio sample from this important work, which includes a pronouncement by one of Posada's close associates, Orlando Bosch, who we will get into in a moment as well as the narrator's intro, and the last communication from the cockpit of the Cubana airliner before it was blown up mid-flight over Barbados, killing everyone on board.